four types of saws. This is your bench top, okay? Your $200, it can go up to even higher than that. I wouldn't recommend buying one that's under $200 because they're probably not worth it. For another, you can buy the right Ryobi for $100 at Home Depot now, but for another $100 you get a saw that's twice as good. Then you got your contractor saw, which basically are recognized because the motor is mounted outside and hangs from the belt. The cabinet saw usually has the motor mounted inside, and it is the biggest and the heaviest. Then they just came out with the hybrid table saw, which is a cross between this cabinet saw, the cabinet saw, and this contractor saw, where most of them have the motor inside, but they are not built as heavy as a contractor saw. DeWalt right now is probably the leader in the hybrid. Jet just came out with one. There's a lot of debate on left tilt versus right tilt, but it's pretty clear and obvious that left tilt makes more sense if you're going to buy a saw, even if you have to go out of your way and pay a little more to get it. What you could do on a right tilt saw, if you're using a rip operation on an angle, is basically that's the real, obviously it's the reason why you choose it. But with the right tilt, if you have the fence on the right side, which is the normal position for it, and you feed a piece through, there's more of a chance of that piece kicking back because it's meeting the right top tooth or right bottom tooth of the blade. And you'll also get a lot more burning. It's harder to control the piece as it feeds through. The left tilt, your cutoff piece is your waist. But on the right tilt, if you're cutting within the fence, usually that's the piece you want to keep, and it's not as safe an operation to run. But you could put your fence on the left side and run it through. It just becomes a little awkward for some people because they're not used to running their fence on that side. That's why most people will go with a left tilt if they can. It's just blade stabilizer. Is it necessary? I would say so. For years and years I didn't use one, but when I started using the thin kerf blades especially, it made a big difference. The 1/8 inch, if you're using an 1/8 inch blade and it's a very good quality blade, which means that it's flat to begin with, then you really don't have to have a stabilizer. But if you're ripping through some hardwood, oak, anything harder than oak, I would get a stabilizer. You're just going to increase your cutting.
Yeah. Is there that big a difference between a regular blade and a thin kerf blade?
Say it again?
Is there that big a difference between a regular blade and a thin?
No, I haven't noticed
a
real big difference, except if you're ripping a board, a 6-inch wide board, and you want 5, 1-inch pieces from there. When you say 1 by 6, it's 5.5. Okay, but if you want 5 pieces from that board and use the thin kerf, obviously the kerf is small, so you'll gain. You might gain some extra wood from that.
Follow up, is it easier to cut with it? Is there any difference? Have you noticed a difference between them?
No, I haven't really noticed a difference in terms of feed rate. 1/8 inch versus. I'm going to go through blade. I can't stand here and tell you shouldn't have a guard on your blade, on your saw, but I like everybody else. It's a pain in the neck to deal with. The one thing I would try to recommend, more than the guard, is the splitter. Here is a pretty quick release guard if you wanted to, and now Rigid makes their saw, which is almost identical to this. It's an Emerson saw, where you can I think it's a wing nut or a quick release, some very quick release thing. And I bet you everybody starts following suit on that, quick release guards. If that's the case, then start using it. But I can understand why most people don't. Because it just does get in the way in certain operations. Ripping is okay. When you're cross-cutting, it's a pain. And anything to do with tilting the blade, forget it. But the splitter is usually associated with the guard, usually on the same piece. If it isn't, or if you don't use the guard and you still want the splitter, then you're going to have to either buy an aftermarket splitter, which probably looks just like this. And for most models, they design it so it can fit where your guard will go the same way. These anti-kickback pulls, which are teeth that grab the piece. If it does try to kick back, it holds onto them. Splitter should be really tight in there, really nice. So this is glued into a piece of oak, which I'm going to remove anyway for my cut. Yeah, sure. But a splitter is really something you're going to want because you may get this to happen. This is a typical example of what happens when you cut hardwood. You can't really see in this light. If you look at this carefully, I'll pass it around. If you look at it carefully, you'll see that not only does the blade bind, because the internal stress of the wood, causes the movement to go any which way it wants. So not only is it closing up at this edge, but it's actually twisted as well. Now I ran quite a few 100 board feet of this, and only a couple of these boards, and it came from the same tree, or close. I'm sure I used a lot from this tree. This is one of the only boards that ever did that. So you get lucky. You really don't know how wood is going to react, and therefore it becomes very important to either know how to properly run your board. Like I didn't have a splitter when I ran it, but the problem was as I'm running it and it binds, it'll stop the blade, especially on a contractor saw. It'll stop the blade dead. So what do you have to do? You have to jam a paint stick in there or something to act as a splitter so you can continue feeding it through. Just set up a splitter in that case and it'll do fine for you. But this is a very good example of any kind of hardwood. Oak, cherry, maple. Most of that will do that. Even quartz will show you blades now, so I'll go through that too. My saw is unplugged. Whenever you're doing anything near the blade, it's not unplugged. That's a good idea to do that. You'll look at my splitter design, which works very well for this operation. First thing you do when you get your saw, how many people have done this? How many people have aligned their miter slot to the blade? Okay, good, you did that. That's very, very important. Does anybody want to know how to do that real fast?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. The easiest thing to do is to get a combination square. It's the easiest thing to do. It's not the best thing to do, but it's the easiest thing to do. Set it up in your miter slot. Raise your blade up a bit. And set the edge of the gauge to a mark 2. Take a magic marker, mark 2. You can do it to the flat part of the blade too, but it works just as well either way. But the best thing to do is to just set your marking gauge up right to that tube in the front, and then move it back to the rear. Move the whole saw blade back to that same tooth and check it again here. I'm going to get it so it's perfect, so you can just get a feel. It makes a specific sound. I mean, you could get right to the thousands if you really, really spend the time on it. But these things are a little, it takes about 10-15 minutes to set up like that.
That'll be the same tooth, Mike?
So, yeah.
Same tooth?
Same tooth. You want to go to the same tooth because if your blade is not flat,
Yeah, but if it isn't flat and you move it back,
it'll still be in the same position where the tooth is in the front. It should be the same. There we go. Now, what you do is you make sure that your combination square is flat against it. There's no crap in your miter slot. You want it really nice in there. You'll move the tooth till you just barely hear it. Just barely hear it nicking it. And then you move it to the back. You got to hear the same exact sound. If it touches it and it's not the same sound, you're not aligned. It's got to make the same sound. And it's just a little scratching. If you tap the back if you have to fine tune it. I found that's easier than readjusting it. The best way to align your blade to the miter slot is to go down by, what do they call it? Dial indicator. And it's made specifically for it. Now you guys can't hear it, but there's just barely nicking there. Same tooth, just barely nicking it there. So this is perfectly aligned. I was afraid it wasn't because the last time I did this, moving it around shifted the trunnion a bit. Now, if it isn't aligned, how do you adjust that? There are generally 4 to 6 bolts under the saw. If you look under the saw, you'll see them. Look in your instruction manual. They'll tell you where they are. You'll have to loosen all 6, and you'll have to tap the trunnion with a hammer in whatever direction it needs to go to get it straight. I can tell you, it could take hours for you to set it up properly. It's not 1, 2, 3, because you get it set up properly, then you go to turn the bolts, lock down the bolts, the damn thing moves on it. I'm telling you, it's a pain in the neck. But one thing I also have to stress is if you do it on a contractor saw, make sure that your belt is on. Make sure your belt is on. Because if I had this off, it was lined up, when I put that belt on, don't ask me how, but it shifts. The most important thing for you to do when you get your saw, besides setting your wings perfectly flat and checking it with a straight edge, both sides, that's very important too, especially for cross-cutting later on, is to get your blade parallel to the miter slots. Okay? Some people will ask, is this miter slot perfectly parallel to this miter slot? It might be. It should be, but what's the guarantee on that? The biggest problem, if it's not, is when you go to set your fence, which is the next operation. Then you're going to have difficulty because you won't have that your fence parallel to your blade. But for the most part, they really are accurate.
Like you mentioned the wings. From what I know, I think there's 3 types of wings. There's the sheet metal, which are formed. You got the hollow cast iron, which you got there, and you got the solid cast iron.
Right. This is really, I think, for weight. They don't they just hollow these out for weight, as far as I know.
Yes, it's weight saving.
Less material.
What's that? It's weight saving.
Weight saving, yeah. And the only thing I miss, from having a cabinet saw is that you don't have a flat surface to put your, put them down on, work surface. But other than that, that's just as good. The question was, can I do the same technique, miter slot to blade with bench top? Yes, absolutely.
If the blade is not perfectly aligned, in other words, it's a little skewed, you can still get a straight cut if you keep it tight to the fence, right? It would just be a wider curve.
No. You'll get burning, you could get kickback, it would be a very serious problem. Unless your fence is perfectly aligned with the blade. Then it's the same thing, but you don't want to take that chance. You will get burning. You will get kickback. Yes, Mike?
Yeah, Mike, as far as the fence is concerned, I read somewhere where the fence can be up to 1/64th of an inch difference in the back, towards the back of the blade, as opposed to the front.
Yeah, some manufacturers have said that, but line it up absolutely parallel. Absolutely parallel. If your blade, they did that because most people can't get their blade parallel to the miter slot. Okay, that's not right. You've got to set it perfectly parallel to your miter slots, and consequently your blade. Don't allow that 1/64. You won't get accurate rip cuts. You just won't. Or no, crosscut doesn't usually matter. You won't get the accurate rips.
Like Ian Kirby says, you don't need the fence right across anyway, so that would allow for the screen. Once the wood's past it.
Exactly. The Unifence, the Delta Unisaw's fence, you can slide it in directions so that once you get past a certain point on the blade, the fence doesn't matter anyway.